So our first speaker is James, and he's going to talk about the Persona engine. Oh, no, very important. Thanks to Sapient Nitro, who is hosting us. So Lisa is from Sapient, if you want to talk to her about a wonderful space. And digital gurus who've made this possible today. No connection with possible, sorry. And funding this event and all the food and the drinks. So it's all the guys that are sitting back there. So if you want to talk to them, feel free. I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for networking. So, James, please.
Okay, thank you.
That may work if you want to use it.
Oh, you're not going to change the slides for me?
Oh.
Because I'm really rubbish with these kinds of things. So, okay.
Give it a go.
Where do I point it? At the machine.
There you go.
So yeah, that was working. Okay, personas. We started out, when we were doing personas, we always had this kind of struggle between, is it something that really supports design, or is it something you should actually give to the client? So you see really nicely produced personas, they look great in presentations, but maybe they don't have enough information in them, or there's not enough truth, or they don't really give you enough detail about who the audience is to support design. But you I guess you have to meet both demands, really. You want some information in there, but you also want something that kind of looks good at the end of the day. So it has to be presentable. So we've been struggling with this for years. Sorry, it doesn't work on the screen, does it? So try that. So we kind of got a fairly solid process going, I think. And it started really, it's just kind of, it's the standard story, kind of started with interviews, observational data, and then we kind of used that to create surveys, presented out to a wider audience, and then get more, more general feedback about who the people were, so we get more confident when we were actually describing these people that it actually applied to the audience in its entirety. But once we got the survey data back, then we kind of had a craft approach to it. So we were left basically eyeballing lots of survey data, trying to cut it up and make sense of it. Did you see us doing that? I don't know. What is it? No.
No, it was just me.
Okay, maybe it rang a bell. So we kind of spent a lot of time basically trying to work our way through lots of reams of data, trying to figure out what it meant. And often this meant using kind of like a survey monkey. So we'd use filters, reduce it down, and then you kind of look and you open up lots of tabs on your browser, and you try to, you go cross-eyed, and you get very tired by the end of the day. And then after we finished doing the analysis, we then had to kind of make it presentable again. So we wanted to kind of illustrate all the work we've done in making the personas. So we kind of produced charts, and it started off using Excel charts, which were a nightmare to kind of put into a document and get them aligned. Has anybody, if you ever had fun trying to do that? They don't always work out well. Then we tried Google Charts to kind of get it more standardized and make it look prettier. So it basically was taking a lot of time. So, sorry, we'll get the hang of this. So this is the kind of thing we were producing. So we kind of started, use SurveyMonkey data here, kind of trawling through it. Then we wanted to show kind of a broad picture of who the audience was. So we start off with the general picture, move down to kind of eventually these descriptions of the personas. Now I'm getting the hang of it. Okay. So, but there were issues with that because we had a small team, and when it came to persona making time, kind of everybody would duck. They didn't really want to do it. It's a fairly tedious process, I guess. So it's kind of all that, as I said, trawling through the survey data, and also I guess you're making a lot of choices based on intuition. It takes a lot of time to, I guess, mine data manually. So you kind of think, well, maybe it's gender that's important, or maybe it's the attitude and the situation. That are the thing that affect the segmentation or how people should be cut up. And again, using data, using filters to kind of do this process, kind of reduce the data down. So by the end of the process, we were left with kind of very small samples. So maybe it wasn't that representative either. Maybe we were missing some data, it wasn't comprehensive. And then we still had to manually produce the charts as well, because at that point, SurveyMonkey didn't, they have charts now, but they didn't then. And the charts were a bit garish anyway, so I didn't really want to use them. So I had an idea. And wouldn't it be better if you could automate this process, kind of the analysis of the personas? So once we got the survey data, and we process it basically. Well, it's kind of the right kind of thing to do, or it's the right kind of material to do it on, basically, because the approach was a set of responses to a survey questionnaire, kind of generates a pattern. So each individual's responses is a pattern, basically, which could describe them based on a particular problem. And that's exactly the kind of thing you can analyze statistically, and there are tools out there to do it. And then, if you can do the statistical analysis and get the data off it, then you can also do something to generate the charts to kind of make your life easier. So if that does all the hard work, you can then sit back and think more about what you want the personas to represent or explore the data more efficiently or in a more relaxed manner. You don't have to do all the hard work. The tool can do it for you. So, for people who like really faint diagrams, this is kind of what the tool is. Basically, we take the raw CSV data, we put it into the tool, and we generate a question set. Now, the question set is basically the list of things that you want to explore. So, if you asked if it was about travel, maybe you've got things about the frequency of travel, who they travel with, the travel party, the attitudes, why they travel, whether it's for relaxation, it's holiday, business, whatever. So you don't have to analyze all those questions. You can analyze a subset or however you want to do it. So you create a profile based on those questions. So after we've worked with the question set, we create this profile. So there's an output from this, which is a profile, and it's that which we analyze. So you can do many versions of this. And then we take the profile and basically we cluster analyze it. So we use statistics to kind of split it up into groups to explore that data. And with cluster analysis, then you can create sets of personas. So you generate the data, which you can build your personas upon. And then you can generate the Google charts to kind of visualize what they look like. So we can work our way through, see how the groups look. So at the end of it, you have kind of material which you can actually generate your personas out of. And it gives you a lot of free time to kind of explore different options with the data. So that's the schematic. Let's see. So when I first started, this was about 3 or 4 years ago. I was working for a small company, and we got a developer involved, Jeremy. He was very good. He had a lot of good ideas about how to do it. But unfortunately, Jeremy left halfway through developing it. So we were kind of stuck because nobody knew really what he'd been doing. So he had the model, but we didn't know what to do with it afterwards because nobody could really pick up on what he was doing. And then a little time later, the company went bust. So there's nobody there anyway, which actually turned out to be a good thing because it gave me some time to think about things, look for a job and do it myself. So that's what I did. So I started again from scratch because I knew exactly what I wanted and I had a good idea of how to build it. So this is the one I built. I've got a connection to the web, so afterwards we can give you a live demonstration if you want, which is probably better than just showing you slides or pictures. But what I have now is screenshots, which are really good. They're not really, screenshots are really good, not the screenshots of what I did, so I wasn't boasting. That's for you to decide, not me. Okay. So this is the first part where we put the questionnaire in, then you get this profile builder. So here are your list of questions below. You get to switch on questions and switch them off. And then you give the name for that profile and save it. I gave mine lots of intuitive labels in this example. This is some work we did for P&O. And so we've got travel behavior, age. You can explore kind of small things or broad things. You can put all the data in or some of it. So once you've got your profiles or a profile to work from, you can then do the cluster analysis. So this is kind of the cluster analysis. So you pick the profile you want to explore. I guess most of you are familiar with trees or dendrograms or busy diagrams. So you can interact with this diagram to segment the audience, basically. So it's hierarchical, so the higher up you click, the broader the grouping, the lower down you click, the tighter, the more similarity there is between them. So you can split up into like 5 groups, 3 groups, 10, as many as you want. You give it a name, you save it out. So with every profile, you can generate any number of views on that data, so any number of personas. And once you got that, then no, that's sound. You get sound. You get the output. This needs a bit of work, I know, to kind of digest. But then you can start to compare the audiences. So in the first chart, we relate to, let's say, the age, the gender, so you can start to see how the audience splits up, where they're similar, and where they're different. So then you can kind of pull out, basically, all the things that are common to that audience. So you give it a broad description, and then you can pick out all the things that are kind of unique to that particular group or that persona. And then if you move all the way over to here, it's really faint. You can see all the open-ended responses, which are mapped back onto that group. So then you have the material then to fit out your personas. So that, in essence, is a persona engine.
right, so we'll have some time for questions.
Why did you do it? Sorry.
So yeah, why did you do it?
No, I'm not going to ask questions of myself. But...
I have a question. Who got it? Who didn't get it? What?
Sorry, I'm the only one raising my hand.
That's okay. Does this mean you have a question or not?
Well, you kind of lost me at cluster analysis, and at that point I was like, whatever. But you know what? I'll be delighted to have a look and come back to you with questions.
Okay, thank you.
My question would be, what's the next step for you? What's the next step for this?
After going home after this?
Yes.
What's the point?
For the two.
What's the point? I don't know. I'm going to cut my wrist after that. I don't know what is the point of it. No, the next step is obviously to make it a bit more humane. I think because when we first did this, say with P&O, we got carried away with the charts. You know, kind of the statistical analysis. You know, the mechanics of it, and what we presented to them. They were kind of impressive, but they're kind of glazed over as well. It's kind of like, you know, there's lots of stuff going on there. And what we found is actually when you start to bring back in the qualitative data, the kind of the user's voice, map it back onto the kind of the, you know, the hard stuff, it makes it much more kind of personable. So it makes it more interesting. I really like that in personas when you have just the, you know, the audience's voice coming through rather than it's being re-edited back as like someone talking about a story about somebody. It actually comes from the audience itself. So you get some really nice, interesting little snippets about people traveling with their dog. And that's why they book in advance, because they have to plan. So it kind of really ties it together and gives it believability and makes it very tangible. So that's kind of one part. The other thing is, I think it's really based on how good your questionnaire is as well. So, you know, you have to spend quite a lot of time getting your questions right, I think, because you get better data out of it. And then there's also the presentation of it. It'd be nice to be able to do a reporting part of this, but it takes time. So that you can actually build your report live. So it's a web page or something, so you can build it as you go. So we're not quite there yet. But in the short term, it's kind of cutting down all that data, I think, making it manageable so you can do the comparison, which is a really tricky problem. Because you want to kind of be able to kind of compare the whole thing, but you also need to be able to kind of manage that data. And getting that balance right is really tricky. So what we're going to do is kind of cut it down so you focus on small areas and then eliminate areas of difference or similarity and then build your reports on that.
Okay.
Question. How would you manage it if there are going to be like more than 1,000 people? So you have to compare 1,000 different jobs.
Well, in the surveys we have over 1,000 respondents. That's what it does. Basically, it reduces it down to how many groups you want. So it's your choice, really, if you want 5 groups or 20. I think once you get up to 20, probably the difference is this, you know, it probably becomes too small and too granular. Because what you're interested in is kind of how, you know, the similarities that are good enough to describe your audience, you get enough difference. It's a qualitative decision. And with this, again, it's kind of, there is a point where it becomes unreadable, I think. But I do have an idea for a different form of cluster analysis for doing this in a kind of more sympathetic way. So you give it a number you want to work with rather than you make the choice manually through it. But again, it's about kind of reading the data. It's not easy.
Yeah, no, because some people are saying maybe A and B together in one answer.
But
so how do you split?
Well, you have to decide what are kind of important points of variance and what are unimportant points, I guess, or what are not. And that's what the thing allows you to do, mine the data, basically. So for certain things, gender has no bearing, say on kind of the travel attitudes, but age will. And age actually has a lot of impact on a lot of design we do. And you find that in a lot of things. So like for National Express, age has a big difference in the way people interact with the site. For something very basic and confidence in just booking online. So with the younger audiences, we found that pretty much everybody, so under 50 would book online. Once they get beyond 50, it goes down to a quarter, from say a half to a quarter, and drops off. So you have to then present a phone number right at the top as a kind of a call to action. So it's kind of making a decision, basically a qualitative decision about what you think is important and what isn't, or is sensible given the kind of the problem.
Other questions? Jason?
So is this publicly available to use and for?
No, this is a prototype.
It's a prototype.
Yeah,
okay.
Basically, it's at the prototype stage. It's a bit rough, I think. I don't think anybody would be able to just sit down and use it as it is.
What would you like to do? Who would you like to be using this?
Well, I kind of think the idea was, you know, most of us are kind of designers. We're not really into kind of stats, I guess. We'd rather be doing something else, like you know, using our touch screens or whatever. So if you take that complexity out of it and just give some people, which is really a black box or something very simple, so you can process the data, it gives them something more solid to work on, and they can think about what they've got in front of them. So I wanted to kind of have something that could pitch at kind of UX people, basically, so it make their life easier.
Because I was just looking at it, it kind of strikes me that it suits people who are, battling or working alongside people who are doing a lot of detailed market segmentation, because, I guess more UX-y type personas are looser and freer and stuff, and I'm all for kind of getting a little bit more evidence behind the assumptions and hypotheses people make around personas. But I can see how this is useful more from a more marketing research perspective.
I think it obviously has that kind of tone to it, but I don't think it has necessarily that output at all. I mean, the thing you notice when you see marketing segments, how they're kind of, golden olders, silver surfers, young and free, they kind of, and it's about kind of value. So the kind of questions they're asking of the segment are completely different, whereas, you can mix all kinds of data back into it.
Okay,
it's just giving you a foundation.
So would you track? Because this is mostly based on survey data. So are you actually tracking any kind of behavioural data, the stuff that kind of maybe distinguishes personas?
So when we actually before we construct a survey, we kind of do the observation, we interview people, we kind of build up on so we know the kind of the questions we're asking are in the right field. So we just want to know how it actually relates to the broader audience. So those things we've observed people doing. How does it stick? How much further does it go? So we can then use kind of all the nice interview data as well to kind of map some of the flesh back onto this. But there's no reason why within a survey you can't ask a lot of open-ended questions. All you need is a key to kind of get that back onto a group. So it's really how you also construct your survey, I think.
Okay.
One more? Yeah.
I was just going to ask how you deal with qualitative data, because to me this is something that I would construct my validation after, so I figured out my groups and I want to make sure they're right, and so I'm going to then interview people and talk to them. But do you have some element of qualitative?
Well, that's the beginning point. So before we start on this process, we just meet and greet people basically. We sit them down, we chat to them, we see what they're doing, find out about who they are, what they like. And it's kind of on that story or that evidence that we kind of build a survey. We don't start with a survey. We start with kind of interviews so we understand what we're talking about when we ask the questions. And then we've got 2 sets of data. So when we have the people, we think of very specific people we met, and they kind of stick with us. And then you can think how does it actually relate back to these groups that we're seeing? Does it make sense? So it's just kind of different data sources, I think. And the richer your data, usually the better your pitch. I don't think we,
Okay. So James will, I'm sure you're happy to demonstrate live.
Absolutely.
Anyone who wants to see more, give feedback, any good developers who want to help out polish it. For now, thanks James.
All right, thank you.
Can you spot it, Matt? Yes.
Not there.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Next presentation is going to be from Matt, who works at Possible, and it's going to be about science fiction in films and how we design the future.
Hi, everyone. The title kind of explains itself, I guess, really. It probably sounds a bit blue sky when you read that title, and how in the hell does this relate to UX? And I promise you I'll try and explain that at least halfway through this presentation. Fingers crossed. What are we actually going to talk about? So I'm not going to sit here and kind of go on to you about we're all going to be in flying cars in 100 years' time and we're going to be transported up into a spaceship. This originally came from a dissertation I wrote whilst at university, and if I'm quite honest with you, the reason why I started writing about this was because I had about 6 weeks left to write my dissertation, as most people do, and I thought, what's the best way I can get away without having to read a lot? So I thought, I can write about films, and I was doing part design at the time. And I thought, okay, we'll explore this. And ever since then, to be quite honest with you, it's been a bit of a bug of mine. And I've noticed quite a lot of a resemblance with all sorts of design, which is quite nice. And UX is really quite important, and I can't quite stress it enough, and then you'll see why. This is just a really random range of stuff. stuff, of films rather, and just little ways of how technology in them is kind of influenced or is influencing technology as we're going. And as I said, we're not talking about the flying ships, I'm talking about the interfaces that you see within a film, right? So you see the pieces of technology they're interacting with. And what's quite nice and what's happening now with audiences is because visual effects are becoming so powerful now, audiences are really smart. They'll pick up on when something's rubbish or it doesn't quite work, and they won't believe it. So that ruins the whole experience, not just the film, but that bit of technology that they're trying to produce. But before we jump a bit further, I want to kind of run back a little bit and kind of just look at where this has come from. There we go, cool. So this is originally early 20th century in Italy. There was a movement called futurists, or futurism rather, and they were futurists, and basically they were all about the future. They were all about speed and technology, and it was a big thing, and it was portrayed through everything, not just design, it was art, and even a key one actually is literature. And I'm sure you've all heard of Philip K. Dick, great author. He's written some amazing short stories, and some great films have been based on them. Just obviously notably Blade Runner, Minority Report, Philip K. Dick, right? So really, really big visionary, right? So he's not there sketching stuff out, it's his imagination, it's how he envisages the future. And what's quite amazing is that this is a gent writing stuff before there wasn't even a mobile phone around, it was really quite forward-thinking stuff. And then guys, there you go, Philip K. Dick, and a really lovely quote was that reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, it doesn't go away. And I quite like that, and I think that's really important for us, right? And again, I'll reiterate why UX is so important. But it's really important. So Sid Mead is another gent. This guy's a living legend still, thankfully, and he started out in industrial design, designing stuff for automotive industries, product industries, and but his real love was futurism. He was really designing stuff for the future, a real great illustrator. And he went on to designing architectural buildings and interiors, but really futuristic stuff for his time, right? And then the film industry saw him and said, no, we really like what you're doing, we really like your vision, we want you to come and design for us. And a great quote of his is, designers in all disciplines, I remember all disciplines, right, have the inevitable task of creating possibilities beyond the limits of the mundane and predictable, to invent not just the idea, but the rationale for futures not yet within the grasp of available technique. Now I think that's a massively important quote, right? This is a guy that's saying it's our responsibility to decide not what's going on now, because it's happened, it's done, it's finished. It's what's going to be happening in not just 6 months' time, a year's time, or 5 years' time, but 10 years' time. And that's our job, I personally think, anyway. And it's a huge task, it's a big responsibility. And so these are just a few of the films he's had a real kind of impact on, and it's nice, Blade Runner, very, really old school film, I love it, it's great. Right up to the latest Tron. And what's really nice is I'll point out a few things in what he's done, but he was really quite visionary for his time when you're looking at stuff that had just been invented really, and he's kind of taking it to the next level, well ahead of his time. So this is an image of a lovely 1970s home entertainment system there sitting on the wall, and then Sydney went, nah, that's not the future. This is the future. There's a guy where TV sets are really just slowly becoming, entering into the home, and then these big, horrible, massive boxes, and there's a guy saying, no, it's going to be on a wall. We're going to have really thin, systems to control our stuff with. And this is where technology like this wasn't even available at the time, right? So really, really forward thinking. And this is just a nice dream home entertainment system for everybody at home one day. But you can tell that from back in the 70s to what's going on now, he wasn't too far off. And this is an interior of a 1970s Volvo. This was a concept sketch for Blade Runner, actually, for the interior of a car. Now, don't get me wrong, we haven't got massive, huge screens, and they're not driving themselves, but if you look at the detail, you've got schematics of buildings or streets here. So this is a gent saying where sat-navs haven't even been thought of yet. Here's a guy saying they could be sitting in your car, right? And we look at the new 2013 Volvo, so a little bit more smarter, a little bit nicer looking, but the concept's there, the idea's there, so, smart guy. Disney, believe it or not, are massive futurists. Incredible. They have a whole team devoted to just future innovation. I think they're called the innovation team. I think it's amazing. And this chap here gets to run it. Lucky guy, right? So, and really cool. That's his job. That's his job. To sit around all day and think about what the future's going to be. So, and I know you're sitting here thinking, well, where we don't design products and we don't design technology, and that's fair enough, and we don't, and I agree. I'm not trying to say we are going to start designing technology and we are going to start designing products. But remember, it's UX, it's experience, right? So, keep that in mind. So, films call them diegetic prototypes. That's what you see in a film as a product. And what that does is it allows a designer to basically prototype an idea at a really, really high level for a fraction of the price. And then what we're doing with that prototype is they're placing it in a social environment. So this is where UX starts to slowly get linked in, right? So audiences, when I say audiences, I mean millions of people around the world are being subject to an idea that is nowhere near even comprehensible. But this is the really smart bit. It's whether an audience believes that idea or not. Now, if they don't question it, and they see that interface in the background, and they just blink, and it flies by them, then you've done a good job. They believe it. So, a gentleman called David A. Kirby came up with this idea. He's an author of Lab Coats in Hollywood, Science, Scientist and Cinema, and he wrote an essay of The Future is Now, Diegetic Prototypes. And don't get me wrong, there's another book called Make It So, by the way, I don't know, some of you might have heard it, and they touch on this, but they really just look at the comparisons of stuff you see in film and stuff you see today. And he said, I introduced the term diegetic prototypes to account for the ways in which cinematic depictions of future technologies demonstrate to large public audiences the technology's need, viability. I can't pronounce that word, so I'm going to let you read it. I really can't, I'm not joking. And he goes on to say that a film's narrative structure contextualizes technologies within the social sphere. That's really important for me, right? The UX design, that's huge, because an audience is believing in that. And this is where we can start picking up those really nice insights, right? Because if an audience isn't questioning it, and they're thinking, oh yeah, well they walk away, and they say, that was really cool, I really like that, yeah, it's neat. We kind of start realizing for a second, hang on, yeah, maybe there is a possibility for something like this. Maybe there is a small market. It might not have to do exactly what it shows in the film, but there's a chance to move that along, right? So example, we'll just look at an example. This is Tron, 1982, yeah? And this scene here, this picture is showing the big bad corporate guy sitting at his desk. And if you look, his computer is actually, you can't see it in the simulator unfortunately, but it's actually built into the desk. And he'll sit there and he'll type, and he'll type on the actual surface, right? This is 1982. Computers were just about, making their way into the homes, right? Then we had Microsoft Surface. Okay, it wasn't massively successful, it was overpriced, but the theory was there, it was really, really nice, right? And you saw some beautiful interactions of people, sharing music, paying for bills at a restaurant, putting their card on the table and swiping the drinks that they had to their card to pay for them. And that's incredible. So I don't think this was not even 10 years ago this came out. And then you got a film from 1982 saying, nah, people are going to be using tables to interact with interfaces. Pretty big stuff, guys. It's pretty good thinking. And I kind of hope that we're doing the same now in not just in films but in design. So it's Microsoft Service, and then I don't know. I'm sure some people have been to an Ammo before. The restaurant where you can order your food off the table and play games and. Great first date if it's not going well and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's good. It's really cool. I like it. Minority Report. It's a big. How can I not talk about Minority Report, right? Kind of the leader in motion and swiping and using your hands and all that stuff. Very cool. Believe it or not, this technology was actually around before the film was about, right? But no one really quite believed in it. Well, not believing it, but everyone thought, no way, it's too expensive. And why would I risk investing that much money in something where everyone's fine with a keyboard and a mouse, and we'll leave it at that. And then it's just another thing that films do. They get people excited, they get investors excited. They're like, right, crap, no, people want this. Let's throw loads of money at it. So that's kind of what happened. And this is the moment where I'm going to tell you where UX links into diegetic prototypes and designing for film. right? So we have a lovely colleague at Possible called Dale. This guy here, handsome fella. Chief Interaction Officer at Possible, and he actually, funny enough, was one of the people on the team that was asked by Steven Spielberg to come on and concept the interface that you see in Minority Report. And he's an interaction guy, he's a UX guy. And that was his job. And he's been kind enough to give me some of the sketches that he used and presented to Steven Spielberg for that film, right? Now, if we go along, what's really important, what he designed here is not just, it wasn't just him, don't get me wrong, there's a team of people, but he was one of the main people there. And the whole idea was, okay, right, it's fine, we have all these great interactive hand movements and stuff like that, gorilla arms and whatever, but how is the interface actually going to work? Because if you're watching a film and you're just seeing a guy doing this, I'm directing people out of a building, you know, I'm not doing anything with it. And it's about this here, it's about this interface, right? This is what kind of sells it. This is the subconscious bit. This is where it's kind of coming in, where audiences aren't even questioning it because it's so believable, right? So I think in the next slide you can kind of see it better. I might be able to sit right on the screen there, but basically all this here is basically what he's saying is this is streams of media and data, right? And then as you can see, it kind of the visually here is kind of collating that, and then he goes on to explain in here like how those bits of data are pulled out and how they move, and it was a really important thought, and it was really quite nice in the fact that filmmakers are really realising that, as I said at the very start, audiences aren't stupid. They will not believe something if it's not done properly. And the reason why I use this as an example, and Dale's been really kind enough to give me his sketches, is because this has had a massive influence on the way we use technology now. So Connect, and there's some really nice stuff coming out soon where you're going to be able to adapt your computers to hand gestures and swipes, right? Now, what's really important is that from the very, very beginning concept of this, UX was thought about. Really, I know it's minute detail and it doesn't mean a lot now because, as I said, in a film it will blink like that and people won't realise it. But that's when you know you've done the job right, because they're subconsciously believing it and they're not questioning it, right? That's important. UX was involved in that, so you know we should be quite happy about that. I'm proud we did something really cool. So it's a ripple effect. It has this great effect where, you know, we didn't see it then, but it's happening now. And it's really important to think about the stuff that we're designing for, not just for films. I'm talking about clients now. I'm talking about when you're sitting down with a client and they're saying, I have this idea, I want to do this, I want to do this thing. And you're like, cool, how can I do it in a month for them? And you just sort of think, okay, I'll solve the problem now, and that's great, and that's fine, but it's the wrong way about going about things, you know? You really need to start thinking about you know, the stuff, the technology that's coming out, and how it's going to affect your client in not just 6 months' time, but a year's time, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, because they're the ones that are going to want to come back to you because you know what you're talking about. So again, this is just Connect being used in the home, just playing with it. And again, the TVs are now even having the swipe interaction. I'm not 100% sold on these yet, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, you know, again, and this has all just come from one idea, from a small concept. So the big question is, who came first? Was it the designers or was it the filmmakers? Right? Big question, right? So, is it films that are depicting the way we're designing, or are we telling the films how to design? I think it's up for debate. You could probably spend the whole evening kind of debating that. But in my opinion, I think they kind of fuel each other. I think that if it wasn't for film, I'm not saying we wouldn't get to the technology we have now, but I sure as hell don't think we'd be as far ahead as we are without it. Because I'm saying, as I said to you, these designs are kind of, they're exciting people and they're influencing people and they're encouraging people to keep pushing the boundaries of technology. I know I'm not just saying that film's a key reason why this is all happening, but it's definitely, I believe, a really big influence. So the next steps, I was warned not to say I'm going to make a prediction because it might be wrong, and in 5 years' time you'll be like, that guy's an idiot, right? But wait for it. There we go, cool. So this is, I love Iron Man, right? I freaked out when I saw this film, right? Not just because I like comics, but because you're seeing the future, right? And now I'm not saying in the next 5 years that we're going to have holographic interfaces that are going to float around the room, we're going to be interacting with them all and stuff like that. That's a bit far-fetched. But in a second you'll see a bunch of screens where he's sitting at his desk in a minute. Right? This here, all this. That for me is the next thing. And the reason why it's really important I've brought this up anyway, is because it's going to change the way people interact and use interfaces. Not from a physical point of view, or using hand gestures, but the way we view them, the way things are going to be displayed, right? And it's huge. I think it's a really important part to think about. And because if you look at screens today, right, they're becoming more and more cluttered with windows. I mean, we can't get enough information, right? We love divulging it. We more and more. And it's about how to display that. The screen's not going to do that. You know, it's starting to feel a bit limited, right? And then you've just got a square box. It doesn't matter how thin you make them. It's still going to be a box, right? And you're limited to a frame. So, again, Avatar, they kind of show a similar sort of thing, slightly 3D-ish, but or holographic rather. But there's a term for these. Give them a term. They're called stereoscopic 3D interfaces, right? And the reason why they're so different is the best way I can explain to you all is, are we okay? 5 minutes? Okay, cool. I'll be really quick, sorry. So when you watch a film, it's not in 2D, we know that, right? Okay, but a normal film, what it does is the photography of the camera chooses a point of focus for you. 3D doesn't do that, and that's why, you know, sometimes people get tired watching 3D film. It's because your eyes are constantly working, because you're the ones that are choosing the point of focus, which is really nice. That's what makes it so rich, and that's what makes it give it a real in-depth feel. And that's what screens are going to start doing. So you're going to start having not content on a flat surface, you're going to be pulling content forward. And this is where, from a UX point of view, we have to start thinking about is how are people going to interact with that? How are we going to display information? How are apps going to run with that? How Windows, how web browsers? How are we going to pull information forward when we don't want to see the information that's in front of us? How do we move stuff away? And again, this is where sort of hand gestures might come in. I'm not saying people are going to spend 7 hours a day working and doing this, but there's really small things. Really long quote from this is James Cameron, and basically the quote's saying he's encouraging Microsoft to really start thinking about how their interface is going to kind of deal with this new technology coming up. And this is a film director. He's got no, he doesn't deal with design, doesn't deal with technology, you know. So what does that got to do with UX? Big question, right? This is the final point, and I hope it sums it up for you, and you don't come up to me later and go like, "The hell are you talking about?" So, what are we doing? We're planting an experience in an audience's imagination. That's what we're doing, right? So they haven't actually physically experienced it, but they believed it. And that's the important part. And this is where the insights come in. This is where we can start picking stuff up, because if an audience believes it, then there might just be a possibility that it can be used and can be dealt with, right? So I come from a product design background, and there's two things I believe in that every designer should have, and not just if you're in product design or graphic, or you're a developer, or you're in UX. There's two things to be, in my eyes, to be really there and smart, is entrepreneurship and innovation, right? And the reason why is we're in the technology business essentially, okay? And it's our jobs to see opportunities, right? Entrepreneurship. Where has something not been discovered yet? Then it's our job to take that opportunity and do something really smart with it. So entrepreneurship. So I'm not saying that we should do everything we see in a film and how it should be done, but we should be looking out for these things and looking out for these opportunities, right? And we're saying, right, yeah, we could do something with that. But how am I going to put my own twist on it? How am I going to, where is this need best suited? What can I do with that? And add my own twist and a bit of flair and a bit of identity to it. And hopefully, if you do those things right and you're smart about it, and you don't just do something for the sake of it. Like, I hate things being built for the sake of it. My God, there's nothing worse. It's pointless, right? You get a really nice experience from it, okay? I'm just going to show you one quick example.
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the Gap. How does assorted tastes work out for you? Mr. Yakamoto.
Right, so I really like this, and the reason why is because it's a big thing at the moment, right? In-store experiences are becoming really huge, and how we're going to design those, and people are going to be interacting with products before they go in, and Burberry are doing some really cool stuff at the moment, and all that sort of stuff. But what's shown in this film, right, is the, I think what's really important with Minority Report as well is they're showing the worst case scenarios of where we really don't want to be with technology in the future, right? And how can we avoid that? And that's what's really important. That's what's quite nice about film as well. It kind of gives us a bit of a warning sign, again, with the social sphere of what's acceptable and what's not. And then a really smart group came up with this, and I probably 2 minutes.
We asked ourselves, why haven't Facebook check-ins gone mainstream? Check-ins provide a powerful mechanism for businesses to deliver discounts to loyal customers. But few businesses and even fewer customers are taking advantage of this. So we set out to evolve the check-in process by creating a seamless method for checking in and getting deals. Face Deals is an automated check-in system using passive facial recognition to notify you of in-store deals that are customized just for you. Cameras have been developed to identify Face Deals participants in a matter of seconds. To get started, log into Facebook and grant Face Deals permission. Next, verify your likeness to complete your profile. When a face is confidently recognized, the deal is set into action. Face Deals dynamically optimizes your deal based on your Facebook-like history and delivers your customized deal to your mobile device, all while checking you in. It's that simple. Developed by Red Pepper Lab.
It's that simple. So they weren't affiliated with it. Well, okay, this is what's really nice, right? So they've taken a really touchy subject and they've done something fairly smart with it. I'm not saying it's going to work, I don't know. It's up to you guys to decide, really. But what's really nice about it is it's just a small, very, very small example of where a small company's taken a small idea, like you've seen in a film, and they've done something with it. I kind of hope that it's related to UX in some way to you guys. I really do. I really think there's a massive area for us to be really kind of helping shape the way we interact with technology in the future. And there's one last thing I want to leave you with. Next time you watch a science fiction film and you see an idea, just pay a slight attention and just think to yourselves for a second, can I do something with that? And if you can, good luck with it. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I have time for a couple of quick questions. Yes, please.
Hi. Sorry, you said that those creative people, that they're really futurists, they could see the future ahead of their time. Did you come up with any solution? How did they come up with those?
So that's a really good question. I'm not saying they had a mystic ball when they saw into the future and stuff like that. These are just general like guys or ladies and gents sitting around, sort of just kind of seeing what's going on now and being just really smart about the way they design something. I think that's what's really important, and this is where UX can play a massive role, because the whole point of futurism is designing blue sky, right, and come out with these cool ideas, and that's great, but how are they going to work? And I can't say how they came up with those ideas. I'd love to, because I'd be in their position as well. It'd be pretty sweet, but I think it's really important to just kind of understand, and Dale's example is a perfect example of they could have just gone really wild with that design, and they could have ruined it, and it could have been unbelievable, and we might not quite be where we are now at this very point, but it's because they really thought about the small detail in those. And I'm not saying that we should all be sitting there and coming up with these crazy ideas. Well, we should. It's great to do that. But I think when you start doing stuff for your clients, for example, it's really important to bear these in mind and just kind of pay attention to your surroundings a little bit and what's going on. And it's just a form of inspiration. My God, you can get it from anywhere. It doesn't have to be film. It's just, that's what I've noticed and that's what I've picked up on. And I think it's a great opportunity.
Thanks very much for an inspiring talk, and I just wanted to query Minority Report, really, because Are we going backwards? I just went to see Oblivion on Monday.
Oh, see, I haven't seen it yet, so you're ahead of me already. There you
Well,
go.
it's kind of depressing because it's a gestural interface, but there's nothing new there. So.
Please don't ruin for people who can't.
Not going now.
I think you know the way stuff looks and stuff, and that's kind of everyone's. That's the whole point of design, right? And that's the whole point of being able to take critique, is you can't please everyone, and that's the fun thing about. That's why I like going into design. If I can annoy someone, it might be a bit more fun actually. But it's kind of that whole idea of that's the way you might not like something, but I think what's really important is to look at, have they really thought about the way that's going to work, and I know it's just a film, but it's really important because you'll realise as time goes on, these things will kind of have these little influences, and you'll be sitting there one day going, shit, I remember watching this in the cinema like 10 years ago,
Okay, so Mark is going to be around as well afterwards the chat. How are people feeling in terms of drinks and food? Are you thirsty? Right. I'm proposing an exercise. If you can, without talking at all to anyone, within 1 minute, get a drink and be back, then we'll do it. Are you up for it? Yeah. Yes, let's do it.
Sorry? Yeah. It doesn't solve core issues.
Yeah.
Humanity doesn't evolve thanks to innovation and technology or nice user interfaces. And to be fair, I think the designers have a role to play on that, which is to improve people's life, not just making the industry more fruitful. I mean, if you think about kind of moving kind of interfaces, Minority Report like, it's very cool, but the only purpose that it has now is to help to sell TV sets, because the TV industry needs to people to replace the TVs every few years, otherwise they're bankrupt. So they need to create new needs for the humanity to keep buying and spending money. That means 3D TV, which is pointless, mostly. That means interfaces like my friend Marcus has at home that we use once, and we got bored of moving our hands to change channel. And, smart TVs, etc., etc., etc. So we are being used by the industry to solve problems that do not exist. So I think we have a mandate as humans to use design, which I always kind of define as the art of empathy. We are humans, we position ourselves as humans, and we're here to help each other somehow, and design has the perfect tools to do that. And especially when you start thinking about users. We call ourselves user experience people, but we tend not to look beyond what the user means. We tend to forget that behind the user is a human being. And we normally stop there. We treat people, and this is a problem of linguistics as well. As far as we call our discipline user experience, we are stuck in this box of people that uses tools. That's it. We are not looking at it beyond that and breaking that box and looking at people that lives in a society and how we can help them and we can make the most of it. So anyway, that's the point. And also, regarding the topic of the conversation today, I'm a skeptic, and I don't believe in innovation by itself. I think innovation is a curse. I mean, we only have to innovate because we have a problem. And as the problems become more complicated, we have to innovate more and more and more. I mean, the fact that we have to innovate, we're living in a world in which innovation is critical, is because we are living in a world that is very difficult and very difficult to manage. And people's lives are very, very difficult. So the world of the designer is trying to solve that. So anyway, the point is that I think most of us won't go to heaven, because in heaven they don't need designers because there are no problems. So the metaphor I wanted to talk about is this. What I wanted to talk is about design from the human perspective. Trying to break that box of the user and trying to talk about something slightly beyond that. That's why there's this metaphor of people being enlightened by a technology device, which talks about the relationship between technology. I mean, what I like is the light. The light is a kind of added value somehow of a computer or whatever into somehow highlights the relationship between people and technology beyond just the usage. So what I'm going to talk about is where we are at, and that's very important. I think we are evolving. I mean, we are not, probably evolution won't be driven around fancy interfaces or spaceships and stuff like that. I believe that sooner or later something has to tweak. We have to realize that we have a problem. Then we will try to design and transform the society in something slightly better based on what we are, understanding of the human nature. And that's a graph I found, I don't know where, but it's very interesting for us because if you think about the maturity of an industry, normally we start with the technology. It is something that is feasible, that can be done. Then we move into the refining of the technology into the different features that we keep evolving. Then we move into experiences, which is more or less where we are at now, which is about making that technology, those features, more usable. We call it that user experience. But I think that we should push, and we are in the right position to do that, as far as we can break that boundary, is to start thinking about meanings. What means what we are doing? Are we making a better world, or are we just selling TVs? So I'm lucky because my background is on arts, so I started from there. And so I'm familiar with meanings. I know that when you do art, every single thing that you do, from every single stroke of painting or photography, as kind of dot of whatever, of concrete, has a meaning. There is nothing there for free. So I'm gonna go through the kind of principles I developed during my career as a designer. I joined Yahoo. Well, I was working as artist, designer, whatever. I joined Yahoo. I worked for Yahoo for 6 years globally, the year 2000. And I remember the day I got the job, called my mom. Mom, I'm working for kind of user experience something. I don't really know what that means. I hope. So it was probably one of the first UED teams called UED in London. And I learned a lot. I also worked with a very cool guy. He was the guy who invented the cut and paste. So that was so those are the principles that I somehow gathered during these few years. First one is what I said before. The product is the experience, meaning it's not the thing that you take with you, it's not the user interface, it's not the copy, it's not the interaction, it's the experience, meaning the product is defined as the touch points of a piece of technology or whatever, as a facilitator of your life. So I remember talking about movies. There is this movie which I like because Mila Kunis is in it, which is called Friends with Benefits. So it's not as fancy as Blade Runner, but anyway. It's a very cool movie to watch from the technology and design perspective because this movie is produced by Sony Pictures, which is a kind of company of Sony that owns Sony technology. So the whole movie is a vehicle for the promotion of Sony products. You have to look at it from that perspective, and you will be amazed. So the guy uses the phone to save the relationship because he has to book a flight to go to New York, whatever, I can't remember the movie. And there is a very interesting hot kind of a scene in which they play with the Sony PlayStation, they play tennis in front of a Sony TV Bravia. And that's very cool, but the interesting thing there is how the technology is embedded into the narrative, into very specific case studies that go beyond personas. It's just a proper narrative that is built. And I mean, the interesting thing is how technology plays a secondary role supporting all that narrative instead of being the center of that narrative. So again, that's the emphasis. The product is the experience. Done. So I did a very, and that's part, I will talk later about methodology, how to take this into account in a more formal way. But a quick search on Wikipedia will give you this information. Those are the dimensions of experience. Now, we're having an experience here. You bought a ticket, you are sitting here, blah, blah, blah. So there is a duration, which is the amount of time I can stand here talking. There is an intensity, which is how interested are you on what you're listening. Are you feel engaged with that? There is a breath. What is this happening? It's happening here. It happens on your home when you book the ticket, etc., etc. And in the future, you will take some ideas with you. There is an interaction, which is in the moment is only one way, but it will be hopefully more. There is some triggers, which is what are the reasons you are here, and there is a meaning. It's hopefully, maybe it's completely meaningless, all these bits, but hopefully there is a meaning, and that's critical. Experiences, of course, are open and subjective. I think everyone get it. I mean, there is, we can rationalize as much as we want. We can do a lot of testing, but at the end of the day, when the object, the design of any kind, the product, the interface, at the end of the day is being related to a particular individual person. We have to take that into account. And it's completed by the interaction with that. An interface with no people, there is nothing, doesn't have any value. You need the human interaction, the human kind of push in order to make it meaningful. Which is what I said. There is a very interesting, I love this case of Steve Jobs designing the old iMac. This is a handle which cost a lot of money to build. And of course, the product managers and the business say, what the hell do you want to handle in a desktop computer? Because it's not something that you take with you. And he said, I want people to feel that they can take it with them. He wanted to create an extra layer, very kind of experience that we're talking about, experience-centric, in which there is an extra level of empathy and connection with human beings that is done through a feature which is completely useless. But that gives a level of poetry, which at the end of the day is what makes this object, and Apple with Steve Jobs, a magic company and a magic type of product. So it has a purpose at the end, but a real one. This is a very nice list of, in terms of meanings, kind of desirable outcomes of everything that we do. That will be very important if we take this kind of things seriously. Now, everything that we do has to deliver, drive happiness or learning or whatever. And I guess not every, some of you, I guess, work on banking, so we have a problem. But with that, but the truth is that I guess if we have some kind of empathy-driven approach to design, and we know that in the other side of the design there is a human being, then maybe we can make some changes. That's more our process. Something again, going back to innovation and visions of the future, I don't buy it. This is a vision of the future. Everyone, helicopters for everyone. That's a beautiful picture. It's feasible. Why not? I mean, the price of helicopters have dropped quite radically in the last few years. Everyone can have one in the roof of their houses. But check this out. The wife at home with the kid, dressed as a maid, a sexual slave kind of thing. This is the context of that vision has changed. That will never happen because there was an evolution that these guys haven't seen. The interface has changed with travel, waste, carnival. But the truth is that this is a moving target. Reality changes. And sometimes when we have these visions of the future, we tend to forget about that. We kind of, our visions is like the reflection of our current anxieties, was a kind of virtual utopian world, and that's not the reality of life. I prefer to talk about missions. Instead of establishing a vision and trying to reach that, I have a mission, say, I have a question, what I want to solve. There is a beautiful example again of Apple, I'm sorry for overusing them, but when they did the iPod, they didn't want to have or create the MP3 of the future. That wasn't the question. They didn't try to innovate. And I mean, for the sake of innovation, they set themselves a mission, which is how we can help people to enjoy their music everywhere they are. As simple as that. It's a question. Boom. So then you start thinking about how we can do it. So instead of creating the most awesome MP3 player with the largest hard drive and whatever fancy lights around, they create a whole ecosystem of products that fulfill that very mission. So this is a kind of clear, pure example of design thinking. And this is a bit complicated, but I can go through it. Innovation just happens, which is, there is this beautiful experiment again in the 50s, in which in a lab, in order to understand how life came into the world, they set up, in these little things around here, the conditions of Earth when theoretically the life started to happen, meaning the materials the lightings, the heat, the water, etc., etc. So they put everything together, they kind of plug it in, exploded, and all of a sudden, a few hours later, there was some amino acids in it, which is the beginning of the carbon-based kind of life. So it didn't prove, and there is still people that are hardcore creationists, but the truth is that what we want, I mean, as designers, what we have to do is to try to create around us the conditions of things to happen. Put the right knowledge, the right people, the right tools, and just let it go. It's not that easy because, for a number of reasons, I will follow up on that. So, going back to the previous experiment, when you think in terms of design, designing products, I prefer to call, or to try to instead of that, trying to define stages or playgrounds or frameworks or systems. Look, imagine that you're an investor and somebody comes to you with this idea of Twitter. Oh, what the hell is that? In the 1990 something, or 2003 or something. That was the original Twitter. What are you doing? There is a little box and an empty thing. I say, what the hell is this? Why should I give you my money to invest on that thing? The beauty of Twitter is that it's not a product, it's an stage. What happened is that it's a framework, a playground for people to interact, and they got it. But only starts to have meaning and value as long as people started using it. Even more, what is the product on Twitter? It's a simple kind of messaging system with limited to 140 characters, it's nothing. The real meaning, the innovation, that didn't come from the smart guys who put that together. It came by observing and interacting with the system. In fact, the product, the meaning of it, has changed quite a lot. I mean, from what are you doing to what are you to, I can't remember what was the different kind of call to action they have here. And now, from a social media type of proposition, now evolving in a proper media, on a new type of media type of product, which is a completely different kind of, from the meaning perspective, is completely different. And it will keep evolving, it will be transformed into something new. So again, this is about putting the conditions, setting up the stages, setting up the framework for things to happen. Well, that's obvious. Again, going back to believing in innovation, the truth is that based on Steve Jobs, that we all respect, creativity is just connecting things. But in order to do that, we have to be exposed, and we have to be exposed and happy to take on conflict. Meaning, when you work, there's something that, the first time I worked on this presentation was some time ago. I had a talk with people at Ericsson in Sweden, and UX is part of a lab. They are hidden in this little corner of the building. They have all the tools in the world. They're very cool guys, very smart, but they have a design lab. And I think that, it's a guy's why. This is not what design is about. Design doesn't happen in isolation. There is no. In order to design, you have to understand those points that you need to connect. And in order to understand that and have that visibility in the kind of bigger sense, you have to be at the core of every single organization. So that's one of my jobs. I did design the Yahoo front page, the global one in the year 2005. And it was by myself hidden in a room, literally. And it was the largest website in the world at that time. And against that site, there was 4 pitches. 3 large agencies in Silicon Valley were pitching for that job. They did the work, whatever, and the guys were desperate, and they asked me, Alberto, can you give it a go? Yes, of course. So I was hidden from the world in that little room for 1 week, and I came with this solution, and my pitch won. It was the favorite for the business and the favorite for the people. And I'm not that smart or not that great designer. The only reason because that happened is because I knew the shit. I was part of the business. I knew the people, the stakeholders. I was very familiar with the audience. So it was very, very simple. And again, that's why, because I was exposed to the conflict and the issues of every single pixel in that page, every single small bit of real estate there has enormous value. And I knew that. So that's the summary of what we just talked about. Let's move on quickly as soon as the fancy animation finishes. So this is kind of the summary of it. This is this kind of graphic in terms of how I do understand design. And I'm lucky because I come from the art world, but I also know a little bit about UX as a discipline, kind of from the scientific perspective. But so design is somewhere in the middle between, for me, but it's a subjective kind of between art and science. And so how art relates to meaning, science or UX as a discipline relates to function. Design as a whole relates to ideas. It's easy to understand if you visit to the top row. Art is about love, which is the meaning. Of course, the function. I don't want to say the word. and desire being the urge of moving from the meaning into the action, which I guess is a metaphor easy to understand. Again, love without desire, without sex is platonic. It's poetry. Sex without desire and without love, I guess it's boring. And desire without sex or without love is psychotic. So the important thing is to have in mind all these components and how to move from one side to another. And in fact, if you see about the sub-disciplines of user experience and design in general, you almost can drive this. I mean, usability and accessibility is moving from the function into the meaning, so integrating function into ideas. Branding, etc., is moving in this direction. And design thinking is somehow emerged from the center about the holistic view and kind of integration of all these components. So let me go through a couple of examples. This idea of design as a Trojan horse is an idea, when you talk about design within organizations, how design could be as a Trojan horse that introduces an organization and then is able to change things. That's wishful thinking because that is quite complex, but it's important. And I think the role of a designer within an organization is changing a lot. And thankfully, we will be driving innovation, especially if it's built around meaning. So I'm going to talk about, this was my business, WebJam. I ran this business, a social media platform for 4 years with two guys sitting there in the corner. There was my co-founder, one of my designers. And this idea of the designer as a gardener, the seed of a product is already built in the DNA of everything that we are doing. Our role is to let it grow and just, carefully let it grow harmonically. I will tell you how. This is this kind of design thinking kind of inspired model that we developed for WebJam. WebJam was a social CMS. It was a tool to easily create websites around communities. And it was built in a B2C type of mindset, but at the end we ended up doing some work for large corporations, doing intranets, stuff like that. And the idea was, by the way, this is the WebJam now, it's called Hats Platform. If you want to talk about it, this is a fantastic really product which allows this type of development. The idea was the following. We are creating a social site for a given company. We have a tool, which was WebJam, which allows high interaction of development. It completely broke the standard development process. You don't need to spec, you don't need to wait for development to do something and then refine. Everything was drag and drop. It was extremely simple. You can create pages, replicate pages, add modules. If you need a blog, you need a forum, if you need whatever tool. On the social space, we had a huge catalog of them. You just drag it in the page, you reshape it, you customize it, and it's done. So that allowed a very highly interactive process. Therefore, what we did was to integrate people within the communities, social media experts. They were part of the communities, and we started with a prototype that we threw into the community, and we started refining it with them. So it was like letting it grow based on their own nature, and observing that and refine it as it goes. So from a definition process, understanding the narratives of the community, and into a proper activation on the social media world. Anyway, I used to surf for a long time, and one of the cool things about surfers is that you learn how to make order from chaos. If you don't surf, and you go in front of the ocean, you don't understand anything. You see just a mess of white water and waves and stuff. But as soon as you learn how to see that, you start understanding all the patterns that emerge from that chaos. And that's how, these two surfers, what they're doing, they're understanding how the brake is working, how you can go and sort those ways. And that's how somehow you approach a complex project from the design perspective. You look at it from the outside, you look at the chaos, and thanks to the training and the expertise and the research, you're able to understand the patterns that start emerging within this chaos and make order of it. The end result, the product is just a consequence of the understanding of that chaos. So that was my team at ITV. I call it ITVX, which is ITV Experience. And again, the beauty of ITV is a TV company, it's a broadcaster. So I was lucky there because I didn't need to talk about users. I was talking about audiences, which changed completely the communication. We were targeting audiences, no particular users, because as you know, people don't use TVs, they watch TV. They enjoy TV, they have fun with it, but they don't use it. It's only one button away. And we wanted to do that on the digital space as well. How you're able to move that level of enjoyment and interaction into the digital space beyond the TV screen. So this is the standard process that we follow within the team. The diversion, ideas, and conversion from beginning to end. And the beauty of that, and we managed to convince the business that design was involved and driving the whole process, that beyond the definition of the business need. We were driving innovation by being up here, and we were the ones that we collected all this kind of information and we were kind of refining that into a set of, let's say, concepts. Then we create some level of prototyping, and then we refine it until we have something that then it was sent to the build and release, and then the process starts again. So we really like in that front. And but we went a little beyond that. As I told you before, when we talk about the principles that I follow, is that idea that missions before vision. So the first thing I do when I start a new project is asking a question. So, let's see here. This question, for example. Well, let's go back for a second. It's setting up the mission, basically. It could be formulated as a question or just a statement. So now then is when I apply the principles of experience or understanding of experience as the driver of this design process. So I created this kind of matrix in which first we set a mission. Let's say we are here, the only way is Essex is a show. We want to make the most in the digital space to extend that experience of the only way is Essex towards these people. So we use personas, kind of basic research, etc. I mean, this is not probably as detailed as you can get, but it's good enough. So we have the mission, we have the context, we have the persona, we have the principles that we define through workshops about how our design works, what is driving the design, and then we have those dimensions of experience that we talked about before. So at the end of the day, innovation comes from asking questions about the relationship. So let's say, how we can increase the intensity of the experience, so the experience being the only way is Essex, in relation with time. I mean, understanding about when we push content, is maybe Friday night the right time to push, the premium content that we collected over the week, etc., etc. So it's about making those connections. There it is. This is one example of one particular question. So this is about context and intensity. How can we optimize them and engagement, depending on the context of the experience. Then you think about let's say, how Emma can take the only way is Essex with her at work. So you can think about what is she going to consume on her mobile phone when she's at the bus. Is there any update that we can set by email that she can easily consume at the office with no sound or risk of any kind? So it's about asking those questions. Then slowly you start refining the product specifications. This is a whole list of, I don't want to go into detail because we are running out of time. So, but this is basically what there's a methodology. What we did at the office on the design studio, we just, with sellotape, we just created this big matrix on the wall. So we have the principles that don't change. We have the dimensions that are also fixed. Then we have, we keep changing the question and playing, kind of brainstorming about those relationships. And it was a great idea for generate first a deeper understanding of the product or the product set, but also creative ideas for campaigns or whatever is needed. So that's it in terms of case studies. Anyway, I added this couple of screens. This is more thinking about the role of design with the organization. But the truth is that business keeps saying that they need innovation. That's again because they need money, and we can, designers can offer that. But also they said that they need differentiation. And we can differentiate because the uniqueness of the solution as it's targeted to particular needs. They need new standards of quality, and we are driven by quality. So this is kind of generic things that you see in every single kind of pitch of any corporation in the world right now. It's quite standard. But what happens is that we know about these things. And that's the amazing things. That's why the role of the designers of the drivers of innovation and business is changing and evolving and becoming more and more important. the same, the opposite. I mean, what the business can offer to us to make our work. So we can do our job. I don't want to go into the details of that. I want to upload, I guess, the presentation if you want to have a look at it. And finally, I made a quick analogy again. This is a kind of concept called cultural cycles, which talks about the relation between humans and the society, between the everyday practices and artifacts and the things that we use, the institutions in which we relate, and the foundational ideas. And if you move this into the corporations, I was a bit obsessed with corporations at that time. It was, user products and services, process organizations, and value, mission, purpose. What happened is that, so this is not very visible here. Anyway, if the business is driven by corporation, that at the end of the day, starting from here, it's very difficult for it to reach the user. You know that there is a business need. They push for innovation. They spend money on it, and at the end, the role of the design is just to make something that is seductive enough for people to buy it. Basically, fancy TVs. If there are other type of organizations in which everything is driven by technology. Technology is first, and then the role of design there is about making that technology useful. Basically, it's about usability and accessibility, and that's it. It's not driving it either. It's just making it slightly more human. And I believe that the role of the design is not here. It's about connecting all those dots, being on top of the values, representing the values within the organization. It's about defining processes and being part of an overall kind of overarching, being up there in the hierarchy of decision making, especially as connectors, people that are able to understand marketing, product, they're able to understand business, they're able to understand technology. And we are a little bit of everything. And we have a role to play there, which is very important, which is actually what I do now in the startup I'm working on as Chief Experience Officer. I don't have my only tool is Keynote. And I do design with Keynote. And my role is a mix between ideation and communication of ideas, and making sure that everyone is in line. That's the role for me. I mean, my evolution as designer in the last few years. I don't use any other tool than Keynote. And design is very nice how it evolves from communication. When you identify a problem, you're able to describe that problem and slowly start taking shape. And the cool thing about Keynote is you start to kind of basically wireframe those ideas. And then it's taken into proper design process. But again, it's not just a little bit of that. It's about being the glue among all these different areas of the organization. And that's critical. Anyway, and that to finish, this snapshot, that's it, of my new project. I'm working on an amazing project, which we're about to launch in a couple of weeks, or 1 month. And we're going to do it again. Which is built around the world of entertainment, so it's show business. Thank you very much.
Couple of questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Questions for Alberto. Yes.
Hi. You had a slide that you teased us with before as well, which had something about it's more fun to be a pirate just before you went into your ITV bit.
Damn.
So what was that?
Well, I mean, that's the whole point about being a designer with a large organization. I've been at Yahoo and I've been at ITV as a large organization, but I also have experience. I founded a startup, and now working on a startup. So the designers are really disruptive if you take your job seriously and you don't want to be stuck in a box. If you are able to define and push for proper processes that are kind of human driven, I don't want to say user driven, but human driven, you are able to innovate, you are able to push ideas, you are able to influence. And of course, if you are surrounded by good people, by other pirates, and they actually look like pirates. It was a very, very nice thing. It is a very nice, I brought some of them into my new team, And yeah, it's about the disruption about that. And in fact, our symbol of the X was a little pirate thingy. And that's what kind of more or less the message I want to convey, which is design is more important than it looks. It's not about filling the needs of somebody else. It's about being at the center of the problem and defining the problems and trying to solve them with common sense and a bit of empathy.
I did have a question. It's a little bit vague, but do you find there's a tension between trying to, as a startup or any business, fulfill the need to make profit and be a profitable business and sell TVs at the end of the day, but at the same time trying to be more human in what to do, and it's the more idealistic point of.
No, well, I mean, idealistic and not. At the end of the day, selling TV. I mean, people like TV, people love TV, people enjoy TV. So what is a fallacy is to make that distinction as good design is not good business. I think it's the opposite. I think there is an example I love when I think about experience design. Think about Instagram. Everyone knows Instagram. So Instagram managed to transform people's life, at least for 5 minutes per day, into to put artist mindsets in people's minds. This is a very powerful, meaningful thing. It's a beautiful product on that front. As an interface, whatever, it could be as simple as it is. But as a product and an experience, it's able to, I mean, all of a sudden, you walk on the street, you see something amazing, this is an Instagram moment I would like to take. That is a change. That's a real powerful, meaningful idea that is very human and adds value to your life, quote unquote. And that's a great business as well. I think when you find something meaningful and real, I think you can build a business around that. The thing is that normally businesses are very tactical, short-sighted, and the transformation becomes very difficult. But if you are able to I'm lucky because I'm in a startup, so I have a level of influence that I don't have in a large organization. But even so, by keeping pushing and kind of explaining and giving the reasons why things are like that, that by adding value to the people's life, people will love your products. Therefore, you're going to sell it more.
Yeah, makes sense. Any more questions? Okay, thanks, Alberto. So I hope you enjoyed tonight from seeing how you can think and deliver different ways of UX to how you can be inspired from movies all the way to having new cool tools. And on that note, I don't know if you've been asked from members of UXPA, the committee, but we have a board outside. We would like your ideas on what's your cool tool that you're using at the moment that makes your UX work easier. If you say pen and paper, it's been said before, we need tools that people are not possibly aware of. So please take a moment and put the post-it up, and we'll probably start later on our website. So we have about 40 more minutes in this space. There's more drink outside, thanks to Digital Gurus. So thank you very much. So yes, especially if you're looking to hire or you're looking for your next UX job, please do talk to them. Yes, if you want to stay a bit longer, you need to follow Dave, the Vice President, who will be going to the water point, the pump just behind here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really good.
Thanks. I enjoyed it. Thank you. You say you were going to share the stuff. Yeah. Some nice stuff.